Welcome to this space, which we called Supervision, Resonance, and Wisdom. And mostly what we want is this harvesting resonance and wisdom from whatever happens in this room today. So, a bit of what we will be covering and what we aim to focus on is a little bit more on clarity in what we do and how we serve from our CFE. We all have, let's say, leeway to serve in different ways. An overview of competences, not just because you don't know them, but because we want to know how they're fleshing out in what we do. Reflection on group supervision and reflection on reflective spaces. And I've seen some people there that are already working on this. And then, as I said, the aim is to explore this resonance and this wisdom and do the harvesting in breakout rooms. And this might lead to volunteering work ahead for some of you who might want to join how we work. So, Supervision Center for Excellence, some of us are here today. I think so far I'm the only one from Latin America working within the Centers for Excellence. So that, and that is wow. And it's very, very wow to me to work with such amazing people. Anna is not here today because she's working from Portugal. Joe Searle, who is on vacation in the bush, as she said. So I learned a bit about how they call different places. Satoko, who's recently joined us with her wisdom into the group. Joe Cleary, who is also enormously involved with being a lead assessor and with the 5-day challenge. Ken, who is also leading the group coaching CFE, and who is amazing with his sense of humor. So all these people together having a conversation, to me, is already what we aim for when we talk about being global. And in supervision mostly, because the reason I joined, although the way I joined, is because supervision is so very little developed in Latin America. And then by talking to other countries in Zagreb and in different webinars, we find out that supervision is not that much developed in many other countries. So what we do is precisely deepen the understanding and broaden the uptake of supervision, because we find it's key to what EMCC does, to what we do, and for the development of our professions. So how to join? We've been working with different countries. Last week, I think we were in Supervision Week in Russia. Michelle and Ken were there as well. We've participated with some countries, 7 in all, I think, that got together for another webinar. So to those of you who have not reached out to us yet, do so. There's a lot to be done. There's a lot of wisdom out there to be harvested. And there are things that we can do for local communities. That's what we intend to do. We say we are a hub for this. So, what main thing we've been working on and we want to see come alive is the Supervision Competence Framework revision. And just for us to step back and say, where are we here? What are we doing differently in the face of AI within the system already? How are we managing the supervision contract and process? And the ABC, always be contracting thing that is appearing in every single webinar I've attended lately. How we facilitate development, how we provide support, how we promote professional standards. Again, how we look at ethics, for example, in the advent of AI, of new technologies. And the being, yesterday, for those who are not familiar with soccer, yesterday Argentina had an amazing match with Egypt. We almost had a heart attack. We won, but it was bringing me to the being of that team, on the self-awareness of the players, on the relationship awareness, on the many passes that were happening. Much in the same way in supervision, how many passes are happening when we hold group supervision, for example? How much systemic awareness was there in the players, in whatever was happening there? Because it was not just the teams playing, but the cultures playing, the stadium where it was, whatever was happening. So that brought me to how much are we in supervision self-aware, aware of relationships, aware of AI, aware of all systemic things like the confusion in the room we spoke about today. And the one that we will pay a lot of attention to today, and I will let Satoko take over for that, is this belonging, how we facilitate group supervision, what happens when we facilitate groups. So as I speak, what I would like is to begin savoring that, what is going on with this framework coming to life when we supervise, when we are supervisees. So I will move on and allow Satoko to take over.
Thank you, Clara. Thank you. It's quite important concepts being introduced by Clara, and as a segue to why group supervision, I would like to shift our attention a little from the head to body and the heart and the experience into, in addition to a cognitive learning. We learn not only with our heads, but with our hearts and the whole bodies. So let's put the experience of here and now to use in our learning to, help our making senses. So first of all, let's scan ourselves for a moment. Our body, our heart, the feeling, and mind. How are they right now? Let's just notice. And now let's notice what emerges simply from being here together. We have 132 people in online, in Zoom, in this moment, from everywhere in the world. And we are already in a group. Even those of you alone in the room, joining online like me, we are participating in a larger system right now. What's happening in here? What happened because we are with others, not alone, because we are learning together in the group. Just, keep noticing. And in a moment, Daniel will place you in a small breakout room of 3. And please simply share what's happening in you and what's happening in between in the group. Nothing to solve, no conclusion. It's just noticing what's bubbling up, what's emerging and then what's like being in a group. And from that, what might we begin to learn about group supervision? Daniel, whenever you're ready, we are ready to come into the breakout room for 10 minutes. So as you come back to the larger room, whenever you felt in your small group, just keep it with you. Gently, don't let it go. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So just maintain what you've been feeling in your small group and then keep it with you gently. And now let's move our attention just a little from the cycle of 3 or 4 out to this larger cycle. All of us here and now together. And you might feel a shift. You might feel difference. Whatever emerge in you is just right. So I would like to hear what's coming up for you or in your group right now. You can put in the chat box, or you can just off mute and speak. I would love to hear your voice. So I just fine. You can put in the chat box. You can off mute and speak what came up in the group and with you right now. Connection. Sorry, I'm just start reading. It's coming up in the chat, so it's oh my goodness, it's a lot. Passion, validation. For me, it activated a sense of belongings to a community. I feel safe and accepted. And the communication, resonance, reciprocated, genuine curiosity, and the offering of support. High speed, full authenticity and fun. Connection, belonging and pride, connection and understanding. Sharing and connection, bonding in humor, a sense of openness, curiosity and connection. Curiosity, bonding and curiosity and interest, curiosity, landing. Connection around the shared passion for supervision, group supervision was I. Context determine content. Grounded in self, but then uncertainty, unsettlement, and the confusion when moving to the wider group with anticipation and the curiosity. Thank you. That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Looking for common references, bonding, empathy, feel like we established trust and safe space very quickly by being vulnerable and calling out, how we felt. Connection between human being. Yeah. Closeness at the distance, still place whether with or without camera. Being present, curiosity, grounding and connecting. So, a lot. Wow. Thank you so much. So lots of people seems to be connected and curious and, in the group. And also some people come back to the big room and dissociation. And then I have to say, everything is fine. Everything is, just right. no good note, no bad note. So we all part of the music. Some people might include it, some people feel detached, and that's all becoming one music together here and now. And that's how we learn from student of our experience, student of our our own work. And I would like to invite Ken into this in group process, how we feel the group, experience the group, and what does it mean to group supervision?
Thanks, Toko. I've been noticing as you were reading and just sensing into the room the feeling of connectedness and passion, empathy. But this one comment from Stephen really caught my attention because it feels like the process that I'll talk about myself, go through when we're part of a group. And that is, we are aware and ground in ourselves, but then there's this transition to moving into a wider group. And we all have different levels of comfort in doing that. And each group is different. So we're both giving energy into the group and receiving it. And that can cause some unsettlement, uncertainty. There's always some uncertainty that we want to be with or not knowing. And that's part of the resonance, has been mentioned here, but also dissonance that can be part of a group and part of group process. And that's what makes the messiness valuable in terms of how we do groups. But I'd be curious just what's here now as you've been reading and listening to the two of us, any other insights around group or transition from being in reflection within yourself to being in reflection within a group that is here right now for any of you that's coming up? You need to raise your hand or come into the room, however you like. Chat is cool, but a bit overused.
Love the variety of responses. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you, Fiona. So I'm getting a question about the messiness, Esther. It's that moving from resonance to dissonance, and that we're all bringing in our personalities, our patterns, what happened to us before this meeting, what we're thinking about after this meeting. This is all what I would call, the technical term I use is messiness. So that's what, it's just being a human being stepping into a group process. Not sure if that helps, but that's how I would briefly describe it.
And again, I have to say, we are completely in unknown. So being in unknown, not knowing place.
The unknown made me think of this liminal space and how it plays out to me, the not knowing what you are not knowing or knowing, and
Yes.
how that plays out in the group, how the liminality moves inside the group and around.
Nice. And I see Stephen has raised his hand, so please, we've been talking about your comments, Stephen, so welcome into the room.
Thank you, Ken. And I suppose what I was noticing that as my comment was read out and acknowledged, I felt more settled and heard. And then as the discussion has started to open up, there is that sense of feeling closer and being more willing to put up hand and engage and to become part of the group. So it's for me, it's always that dance between establishing rapport and connection and safety before jumping into this is what we're doing and how we're doing it, and the messiness of contracting for everything coming into the space. It's and also accepting that part of that is my pattern in groups in terms of I always feel uncomfortable regardless of any group, except for those that I already have a strong relationship with, and everybody else is different. So my experience is not going to be the same as others.
Very much appreciate you sharing your process, what's going on for you, and differentiating that it may be different for others, but that it's widening into a broader connectivity with others. That's one of the main takeaways. Maybe Victoria, and then maybe one more, and then I know we have to move on.
Hello. It's just been a really poignant reminder of the implicit expectations and the unconscious assumptions that we're all bringing into the room from all of our different lives, journeys, perspectives, hopes, dreams, and fears, and also then that there are 130, however many people on the call, different versions of the truth, as well as the kind of objective truth that we can't see, and that all of that is valid.
Yes, there are so many versions of the truth in the room. Yes, and it is it is true that I have the truth only here. But aside from that, thank you, everyone. I think Satoko, we may be ready to move on. Would that be right?
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone. That's wonderful.
Thank you. So I'll continue sharing, and do we hand it over to Michelle?
Thanks, Clara. So this slide is quite an important one. I don't have a lot of time to comment it, but you should know that it's a summary of 2 decades of reflection and practice by the community, worldwide community of supervisors from the 5 continents. And so I'm just going to comment a couple of points. First of all, collective intelligence. So, you see the bullet number 4, co-creating a we, enabling collective intelligence. So, you should know that there are some scientific studies about collective intelligence, and now we know how to foster collective intelligence. We know the factors that are able to improve collective intelligence, and we can deploy these factors in group supervision. For instance, trying to increase relational intelligence, or being very attentive at the equality of speaking terms. Everybody should have an opportunity to talk, and not too much, I would say. Also, we have in group supervision, we should be very attentive to parallel process and systemic reflection, which is a different way of replicating phenomena from one system to another. And I call myself, for instance, parallel process hunter. So I'm really very attentive to what's going on in the group so that I can exploit for the benefit of the supervisee. And also, what's important is what we call in France metaposition, but it's now a word that is used in a number of countries. Metaposition is the possibility as a supervisor to be acting and to be observing. And observing what? Me, the supervisor, the interaction, and the system, the group, and the supervisee. And so this position is very key in group supervision and allows to, in fact, know exactly what's going on and where to go with the supervision. So I'm not going to say anymore. Some think that this slide is quite mental, but it's a mistake to believe that. Behind every line, there is a lot of emotions and feelings, and it's very, very key to go deeper in the understanding of that particular slide about group supervision. Thanks for your attention.
Okay. So
Now,
probably
yeah, I have also to comment this one. I mean, from the previous one, we worked on finding the definition of group supervision in a few lines or a few words, and this is what we have designed. I hope that it reflects everything, all the elements which were in the previous slide. I think we are going to improve that over time with your comments and our thinking and our experience, additional experience. So this is it. We have added to the set of definitions, the definition of group supervision.
And if I may add here, there's something interesting that Araceli mentioned at the beginning, that there is a competition for research being opened. And one of our aims for this second half of the year within our CFE is to go into research of what group supervision is, and again, harvest the wisdom in a more systematic manner so that we can continue to support definition with research. And for that conversation and for many others, you can join us on Circles. That is where the conversation will continue. So, Michelle, do you think we hand it over to Ken? Do we make room for questions? How do we go about it?
I would say up to you. I can answer, or we can answer a couple of questions, because I see that there are a lot of questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me stop sharing so we can see people. And are there questions that you would like to address? Michelle, you said there were questions in the chat.
Yeah, but I don't.
There are question from Charlotte. What's the role of supervisor in facilitating group running?
Group learning.
Group running, yeah.
Yeah, it's a fact that with the growth of internal coaching, now the organizations, they are asking to the supervisors of their internal coaches, not only to do supervision, but also to provide some learning to the group of internal supervisors. So in fact, we have, in the case of supervising internal coaches, very often we have two missions: supervising and improve their learning. I think that we, as a supervisor, what we should do is to put that in the contract and organize the supervision so that there is a part of pure supervision and a part of learning. I mean, on subjects that have been defined with the organization. The organization, from my experience, are very precise on what kind of learning they want. So it needs to be contracted. Is that answering the question? Okay.
Something that hasn't come in when the person was reading everything that was on the slides earlier was anything about the shadow side of supervision and how people can feel betrayed or threatened in supervision if it's a group that haven't got the same sort of psychological thinking. They can be quite challenging to other people doing the presentations. I'm wondering what your thinking is on that.
Yeah, it is true. I had a bad experience with, I was asked to do a demo with US coaches, and I deployed a process where I said almost nothing. I mean, it was that kind. I use a process called Cascade. I don't know if you know this one. It's very popular in UK. And when the supervisor is using that particular process, the supervisor is just letting the process make the job. At the end, the supervisee said, I'm feeling bad, I felt judged. And so well, we managed that situation. And after at the end of that demo, when we debriefed, I mean, the other participants said, tell me, that's your fault, you supervisor. You judge her. I said, well, I said almost nothing, so tell me about why do you say that? I mean, and then we debrief deeper, and in fact, what we discovered is that there are a lot of projections. I mean, you know, that's not my fault. Kind of phenomena. I mean, and that's not my fault. It's really part of the shadow you are talking about.
So in some ways, it seems that to be a supervisor, we have to work on ourselves as much as possible to know what the projections may be and how do we work with those in the room.
Exactly. I have what I call a projection detector. When somebody is projecting, I felt a kind of strange irritation, and then I know that it's a projection.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else? Well, I think that we can go to the next part of that session. Clara.
Okay. So, Ken, over to you now. And from group supervision, we move to another topic that's been very dear to our conversations, right? And to our conversations and to the conversations within many other groups. So I'll just provide a frame for this. I took this Shakespearean phrase of what's in a name when Juliet is upset that people would not understand that she will love Romeo, whatever the name is. But we have this name of supervision that does not seem to be the right name many times because we need to over-explain it, right? So there comes a concept that probably Ken can enlighten us about, as you did in Zagreb. So Ken, over to you.
Thanks, Clara. And thanks, Michelle, to talk about groups and reflective practice, because this is really all about reflection. Supervision is reflection. We know how essential reflection is, reflective practices. The research in education is clear about how it transforms experience into learning and insight, and how critical that is for coaches, mentors. There's a really good quote from Margaret Wheatley. She says, without reflection, we go blindly on our way, creating more unintended consequences and failing to achieve anything useful. Pretty blunt language, but that's been my experience. So since supervision is the conversation here, and it's really had a predominant role in the coaching field, it's not a surprise that practitioners, supervisors would want to use these skills with others and bring it into the space of leadership. And we don't know exactly when that started, but it really makes sense because leaders need to reflect, because without it and reflecting on their experience, they're going to not be able to do that conversion into learning. And they need to learn fast, especially in the current environment. And they're needing to surface blind spots, not a surprise. I know none of us here have blind spots, nor the leaders we've worked with who we do executive or leadership coaching. And it also helps in the sense of stepping back, a little bit of what we were doing earlier with Satoko, being able to notice what's going on inside of us, inside the leaders, so that they don't bring their stress and their reactivity or what's going on in their enterprises and systems too much into a room where things can go in difficult directions with their team. These are really critical things for leaders, and that's why leadership supervision started to take off maybe about 10 or 15 years ago. And, it gained traction probably during the pandemic, I would say, because we were all reflecting during the pandemic. We were kind of stuck with that. But my role here is to say that though leaders need reflection, we at the CFE, and one of our roles is to provide clarity and understanding and deepen how supervision is viewed and used in the field, is to say, let's keep supervision as between practitioner. It's practitioner to practitioner. And that reflective practice is fine in working with leaders, but that we want to make sure that we keep the names separate. And that's why what's in a name is important here. So we put out a position statement, and that is on the website. And here's the brief review of what's in that position statement. And really important just to create the boundary and the understanding that supervision is a distinct practice. It's practitioner to practitioner relationship with developmental, supportive, and normative functions, as you know. And it's tied to professional standards. So that's why we're doing supervision as well. And EMCC is a leader in the space. We're extending if we extend the term supervision into leadership, we're risking this ambiguity of terms. So leadership is not a supervised profession in the same sense. And if we relabel it as reflective practice, this will be helpful because keeping supervision in blurs the meaning of supervision. And that's the practical piece of confusion, is the risk of overlap with executive coaching. There's market confusion, and there'll be unintended shifts possible in the professional development field. Because let's be clear, this is really about marketing and branding when people are using leadership supervision, all while meaning important that leaders do reflective practice. We need this precision, is another point, to frame leadership in this way of saying reflective space, reflective practice, but not supervision. So we preserve that the benefits there are about reflection, but we're not talking about practitioner to practitioner work. And yes, we need more research. And Lise, who's on this call, has been leading a group for a while of dedicated practitioners. She's a former board member in really exploring how leaders can reflect. And she supported us with this statement with a comment at the end about more research being needed. But just to roll it up, before moving on, please continue to reflect with leaders, but avoid calling it or don't call it supervision. So I'll hand it back to you, Clara.
I think that thank you, Ken, and thank you for bringing such clarity into this group, which is the clarity we aim to bring in the way we serve the community. And thank you for bringing Liz into this conversation too. And I take the opportunity to thank her publicly for the conversations we've had in Zagreb and later on to see how we continue to explore this, which is important to all practitioners. And there are two questions. Satoko, thank you for checking what's happening in the chat, because having multiple conversations is always a challenge. And there are two questions here that I wonder, Joe, do we address them now or do we move into what you would like to share and then address the questions as part of that? What do you think?
Clara, I think the first question really fits beautifully with some of the thinking and reflections that people are sharing with us. And they resonate with us, resonate with me, and I feel I can speak for the team, that one of the things that we've been really thinking about is what is the real quality in group supervision? What is it? And Michelle was beautifully illustrating some of this earlier. But the question that Claire was raising was, how can we use the definition that we have been developing to get feedback from our supervisees and demonstrate that our group practice is actually group supervision? And I think it's a really beautiful question for us to be thinking about. And certainly when we look at the competencies, it's the one competency that I think needs even more development and more thinking about, which is what we've been doing as a centre. Because a lot of new supervisors jump immediately into becoming group supervisors for various reasons. But actually, in my experience, it's the hardest part of being a supervisor. So I think we're interested to hear and again harvest your thoughts in chat, but maybe some ideas that you want us to really explore further. So any immediate reflections from people on that?
And think that we are planning on real research. So whatever comes in here, all the wisdom of your own uncertainty, lack of clarity is enormously valuable for widening this conversation. So whatever comes up for you, welcome.
We're not saying that we necessarily know the answers. The answers are within the group, always.
Mm-hmm.
That's the process that we're exploring today. What does it feel like to be in a group? And actually, how can we harvest that learning in the group?
Mm-hmm. There was a hand up by Cecile, I think. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Perfectly, thank you very much. I was the one who asked the question about, using the definition given by Michelle to get feedback. I've been in contact with Michelle over the last few months about, the concern I had about ruling out group supervision from accreditation purposes. And I was wondering, okay, I perfectly understand the need for a professional body such as EMCC to regulate what group supervision is and isn't. And I'm very grateful for all the hard work that you put in there. And then if I step into my practitioner's shoes, how can I demonstrate that my practice, and how can we as practitioners demonstrate that our practice matches the definition? And therefore, I would be really grateful if I could have or help build a sort of feedback grid or survey or something that helps me assess with my supervisees whether my practice matches this definition or not. And I'm very happy to create and to run such a survey in order to maybe to be reassured as to how does my practice fit or match or the definition? How can I do better? And also for my supervisees, giving them also assurance that my practice matches what the professional body thinks supervision is. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but pardon my French.
I think you've been beautifully clear, Cecile. And we'll be in contact with you to take you up on that offer and look at what that means. So thank you. I don't think we've got more space to explore it now, but we've really heard you, and thank you for letting us know that you would do something. Thank you.
Yes, okay. With pleasure.
Great. We still have other questions unanswered. So,
Fiona is raising her
Fiona
hand.
had her
Sorry.
hand for a long time.
Could I just say that? Oh, I'm sorry, I've interrupted somebody.
No, I was saying you had your hand up, Fiona.
Yeah, okay, I'll go ahead. I'm just linking what Ken was saying at the beginning about messiness. And I think the messiness we all bring are our biographies. And there's no question in my mind until we really are prepared to explore the biographical influences on how we are coming across, how we are being together. Because it's about relationships. And we've learned a lot about how to be relational when we were children. And some of it's not terribly helpful, let's face it. So I think to actually be more psychologically minded and prepare oneself to go from individual supervision to group supervision asks of us that we grow up.
I think
to our development as human beings.
I think it asks that we have some training in group dynamics and group thinking and all of that, because otherwise we're doing supervision over others rather than with others. And I don't think EMCC is clear about all of that. They have criteria that you need to meet, but it doesn't necessarily go into the depth.
Thank you.
I would just like to mention the cultural dimension. I'm sorry, I put this in the chat because I'm in a volatile space. I operate as a supervisor in an international context and in a French-based context, and I'm seeing so many differences in terms of role expectations, so we are sharing the same competencies, but there are some areas related to how we see the supervisor and what the role that the supervisor is getting out of this projection of this role expectation, whether the supervisor is meeting the expectations or not, and how explicit that is being made. That is fascinating. And I would be interested if other people want to explore that, to create a think tank or something, a cell.
Thank you, Andra. And absolutely welcome to explore that. There is a lot of exploring to do, and I think that messiness of self-awareness, understanding, the maturity we bring into the room as supervisors, what we have in our mind as supervisees when we go into group supervision, measuring impact and measuring what people get from that experience, from that group experience. We saw it today when Satoko invited all of us to sense what we were sensing, and different things came up. How do we make sense of all that together? So Andra, thank you. Cecile, thank you. Anyone else? And probably it's not now, probably it's in the 30 minutes we have at the end, or probably it's in circles. These conversations need to be continued because we still have our own uncertainties. And I agree with Joe, sometimes it's jumping into group supervision probably too soon and without much understanding of what that space calls for. Satoko, you've been amazing at keeping interesting questions in the chat, but I want to turn over to Joe. So Joe, use the space as you want. We can continue on the slides, we can continue on the questions. What would
Well,
suit
I think it's important that we put the slides up.
Okay.
But I'm absolutely loving all the thinking and ideas that are coming out from people, because that's what our hope was of today, that you would come up with these and volunteer to do something too with them and to continue the conversations. So I just wanted to acknowledge with us all, because I think it's been a bit in the space, and certainly one of Cecile mentioned it earlier. And I'm sure you're aware that there is now a new information document on supervision. And it was actually published just last week on Cheryl's last day as Vice President for Accreditation. And it's been a lot of work, and it's been in collaboration with us in the centre here, and with other thought leaders across the community. The hope of it, and I hope that you will have a look at it, and you may well have already looked at it, it's about getting transparency and consistency. And I think it goes back to this theme that's been coming today about messiness. It was rather messy before. And I know that if Cheryl was here today, she'd be saying there isn't a lot different in it. It's just we haven't been perhaps using it as consistently as its intention. But one of the things, and the link with the centre and why we're talking about the definitions earlier, is that it does define what individual, group and peer supervision and peer groups, it defines them in there. And that's the synergy between our work in the centre and this information document that's come from the accreditation team. And it clarifies the requirement, as you know, for regular consistency of one-to-one supervision. And it clarifies that it needs to be with a qualified coach supervisor. It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody that is accredited with us as a supervisor with EMCC, but it is that they are qualified as a coach supervisor. And then there are some exceptions. And that is an exceptional basis. It's a case by case. And there is clarity in the document about what that is. And it also clarifies how much supervision is required. So what we would be interested in, and is that it's really how you will apply this, whatever your feelings about this. And we know there are loads of thoughts and feelings about this, as there is always in any kind of change and transition. But it really, for us as supervisors, but also for those of us that are not in this room, that all of us are supervisees at some point, it's what are we going to do with it? How are we going to connect it and apply it in our practice? What difference will it make for us? What I am noticing, because I'm the lead assessor for people coming forward to be accredited as supervisors, is that I'm inundated. There are a lot more people wanting to be accredited as supervisors. And I think that's a wonderful thing, actually, because it distinguishes us. And you can do that through a qualification, but you could also do it through a portfolio route. through a professional dialogue, demonstrating how you meet the requirements of being a supervisor. So for me, that's a real positive thing that's coming out of here, because it goes back to where I come from, is wanting to get more and more people into supervision, feeling the joy of supervision, and people becoming supervisors themselves, because it's improved my practice as a coach as well through that process. So we would like to perhaps put you into breakout groups. Clara, I'm not keeping time at the moment. So have we got about 5 minutes for people to go into breakout rooms?
Yes, I think we have 5 minutes, and then do your own reflecting on, welcome back everybody, do your own reflecting on how that is something that you can put to use in your own practice as supervisor and supervisee. So Joe, do you want to do some harvesting?
Yes, let's have a harvest. I'm wondering what is coming up for people. So anybody wants to speak? I might not necessarily see your hand, but between us we will.
I'd like some clarity, Joe, because it came up for me in the small group. I've been to 2 conferences, EMCC. Several times I've said I'd love to be involved in what you do, and I'd love to give feedback and be involved, and I have never ever had a response or a reach out from anyone in EMCC. So I feel it's a bit like a closed shop, that there are people in the roles and not everyone gets responded to. And even in Singapore, I've got a very good colleague who's accredited in coaching, in supervision, in team coaching. She's reached out for over a year to get response from EMCC people, and nobody responds to her. So I'm curious, what happens? Who is it that reaches out to us? If we're interested, how do we find a way in?
Well, that's a lovely question, and I know I felt that too. I remember going to my first EMCC conference last year in the UK, and it was then I reached out. I don't think I can answer it, but what has shifted is circle. It does feel like that's the place to put some of these requests, but I think what EMCC is run by volunteers, and I know that I can get overwhelmed in my volunteer work in accreditation and get a bit overwhelmed with it. So I don't know the answer. I don't know if any of the rest of the team can answer that.
Alison got his
One.
He can answer it.
One.
I'd like to answer, if I may. I am member of the Global Executive Board of EMCC. I'm really sorry to hear that, Anne. Honestly, it happens sometimes that we lose a bit sometimes, but I generally try to answer to everybody. So what we will do, Danielle can testify that I try my best to answer to the mails, external mails, and then if they are not in my area, I simply forward them to my beloved colleagues. Okay, so I'll leave you my mail, and if you want also my cell number in the chat, so you can write to me, and we'll try our best to answer to your question or to your issues. Okay.
Thank you, Alessandra. Thank you.
And my email, my EMCC Global email is there in the chat already. So you can definitely reach out to me, and we can explore how we can collaborate, of course. Aline, Alina.
Yes.
Hi. How are
Hi.
you?
Hi, Clara. I'm good. Good. Not so
It's good to see
warm
you here.
greetings or so hot greetings from the Netherlands, which is good because that's the weather was an element in our conversation. So first of all, I saw a question about circle in the chat, and I would like to give some grace to all of the volunteers behind the screen that have been involved from the beginning of the year on making this transition from an IT perspective. And I think whoever is not involved in any of the Center of Excellence or being, I think just bear with a little bit more patience. I think we're going to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I think there's going to be a process in which everybody is going to come in circle as well. There's been a big transition happening in EMCC from IT perspective, and I'm talking here as the mentoring community lead from the Center of Excellence, Mentoring Center of Excellence, yes, besides being a supervisor. So that's why I want to answer that. So let's all breathe, give some grace, because we're almost there with entering into circle. And after that, we're going to have an organized space in which, we can all communicate. So it's coming. Until the end of the year, I think we're going to get there. The second thing that I wanted to share is that in our reflection group was a point raised, and I want to leave it here. We don't need necessarily a response, but with an increased number of qualified and accredited supervisor, I wonder if when education programs are being on coaching and mentoring, they are being accredited, if there's going to be a request to have supervision included in it. Because I think that was not the case up to now. That was a limitation because in the, let's say, ecosystem, there weren't so many supervisors, and there was said that you can work with a peer who needs to be more senior and all of it. Now, things have changed, and that was one thing to be addressed. Because when we look at it, when a professional is being formed as a coach, as a mentor, they actually do not have the type of personal development and personal work as, for instance, if you form as a psychotherapist, you would do that. So besides your training and your skills and your theory, you actually have supervision to work on yourself. And it's not something that will happen overnight, but this was brought up in our space.
Okay, thank you. Alina, thank you very much. It's a very important question. Konstantinos, I also see you there. We're about to wrap up, so until we go to the big conversation. So, Konstantinos, would you like to add anything?
Thank you, Clara. I had a lot of, it's a very rich discussion. I had a lot of ideas and feelings and all of that, but there is one that's recurring, and I'm thinking about, I think a lot of good work has been done on distinguishing practices and concepts, like the supervision from reflective practice, even from mentoring. I would want to add, because it's often the case that when a peer becomes a supervisor, it feels like mentoring is going on, even though it's a supervision, because a mentor can do all of these three functions, the normative and the restorative and all of it. But what I really wanted to add was, from the very beginning, I was really captivated by that question. What changes in terms of introspection when we do the passing from a more intimate space, whether that's self-introspection or one-on-one, to a group setting, and a lot changes. I think we really should take that into account and really draw the distinction between one-to-one supervision and group supervision. It's for me, from my experience, it's almost the word there is misleading. Supervision in both cases.
That is where, if I may interrupt you, that is where research is going, and that is where we will ask for that research space to say, what exactly is it that can help us tell it apart and be clear and continue to bring clarity.
Absolutely.
Right?
And both of them are very precious, and I'm convinced that they have their place, their own place. I just think that and there's very good research about that, and you have the experience that we simply, as social beings, we do not function the same way, even in small groups, in comparison to being one-on-one. Disclosure is not the
Exactly.
same. The social persona is not the same. The needs are not the same. Another part of a brain gets activated.
I think, thank you for that, because that's a great close to the formality of this meeting today. Lots of things have come up from this messiness that we all sensed in the time we were meeting, in Anne not getting answers and me not knowing that Anne was expecting any answer, and lots to be still sensed and perceived from our own participation in this group, that enriches the group we are part of and the team we are part of, to continue to bring clarity. Do we have questions? Yes, that's precisely the liminal space that I refer to when I go into supervision. The not knowing that we humans have lots of trouble dealing with. So from the knowing that we have, I would like to thank each and every one of you for being here, for being part of this group, for sensing what is happening. And for those of you who are able to stay on, we would love to continue the discussion. This will run until the hour, so you are totally welcome to stay with us in this place. Michelle, Ken, Joe, Sotoko, thank you so much for bringing your wisdom and for bringing our resonance into this space, and for welcoming the dissonance that we also know is out there. And we embrace that, and we embrace the shake of whatever is happening. Thank you for all the shows of appreciation. I wish I could be doing that for each and every one of you.